Have you ever imagined what you would do if you were left at the altar? If your world fell apart in front of everyone, without warning, without explanation? That's exactly what happened to Ethan Parker, and the pain of this humiliation seemed to be the end of his story. But instead of drowning in anger and revenge, he chose to transform this pain into something even more powerful. And it was from this choice that a story of overcoming, art, and transformation was born. The pain he felt drove him to find a new purpose and rebuild his life in a way that no one could have predicted. Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover is a story of resilience that will touch your heart and make you believe in the power of forgiveness, art, and renewal. And if you connect with stories like this, subscribe to the channel. I have many more exciting stories waiting for you. The ceremony was scheduled for the most anticipated day of Ethan's life. The sun was shining brightly, illuminating the altar, set up in a simple chapel, but full of meaning. Every detail had been carefully planned, the white flowers, the chairs arranged, the friends and family gathered to celebrate the love he believed he had found with Samantha. Ethan was anxious, but at the same time serene. He knew this would be the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Samantha, the woman he loved, had always been the center of his world. They had met in college, and their story seemed like a fairy tale. Secret meetings at the corner cafe, long walks under the stars, shared dreams and a planned future. During their engagement, Ethan felt that everything was in place. He imagined life with Samantha, the woman he wanted to build a family with. The promise of happiness lay before him, like a lighted path. But at that altar, something was not right. Samantha's nervousness seemed visible, something Ethan could not identify. She looked around, and her eyes, which had always been so bright before, were now empty. The silence that filled the room was deep, almost heavy. The music stopped abruptly, and before he could react, Samantha turned and began walking quickly out of the chapel. Ethan froze. His eyes followed her every step, unable to believe what was happening. The sound of his own heartbeat was the only thing he could hear. He looked at the guests, all silent, stunned, trying to comprehend what was happening. There were no explanations, no words, only the emptiness of the betrayal he was about to experience. Samantha had fled, leaving him there at the altar, with a broken promise and a broken heart. Ethan stood there as if time had frozen in that moment. The altar, which had once seemed like a symbol of unity, was now just a stage for humiliation. The looks around him were a mix of compassion and discomfort. He couldn't understand what had happened. Samantha had disappeared, and what was left was an immense emptiness, deeper than any physical pain he had ever felt. The words of the guests mixed in the back of his mind, but he couldn't process them. When he finally turned to leave, a feeling of disorientation took over him. Each step felt heavy, as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. On the way back home, his mind tried to make sense of it, but his thoughts were jumbled. It wasn't possible. How could she do this? How could she disappear, abandon him like that without any explanation? When he got home, Ethan locked himself in his room. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the images of the altar, the chapel, Samantha's empty gaze. But it was impossible. The pain wouldn't go away. At that moment, he realized how vulnerable he had become, how much he had placed his happiness in the hands of someone who apparently did not share the same feelings. But at the same time, something in his chest began to move. The blow of reality was hurting, yes, but it also awakened something inside him, a strength that he still did not fully understand. In the following days, the questions did not cease. Sadness and anger alternated in his mind, creating an emotional whirlwind that left no room for peace. But between the moments of pain, a question began to arise. What am I going to do with all this? He refused to be defined by the pain he was feeling. He would not be a man marked by betrayal, not after everything he had achieved so far. The process of acceptance would be long, but something inside Ethan was changing. He knew he needed to transform that humiliation into something bigger, more meaningful. But how? He did not know yet, but something told him that his journey was just beginning. After Samantha's escape, Ethan plunged into a deep, emotional abyss. The pain of betrayal consumed him, but it was anger that took over his mind. He couldn't understand how a woman with whom he had shared so many dreams, laughter and promises could simply disappear from his life like that, without explanation, without any consideration for what he felt. Every night, he relived that moment at the altar, Samantha's escape, and a feeling of helplessness invaded him, mixed with a desire for revenge. Ethan spent days in a state of destructive euphoria, searching for answers, wanting to find an explanation, wanting to confront her. The messages he sent, the phone calls that were never answered, and the emptiness she left behind only made the wound worse. Each attempt to contact her was a deeper blow to his dignity. He asked himself, is she ignoring me on purpose? Is she laughing at me? Does she really not care? The idea of revenge began to make sense in his mind. He thought of ways to make Samantha feel what he felt somehow, and his anger only grew with each passing minute. But then, something unexpected happened. In the midst of the whirlwind of emotions, Ethan received a message from an old friend, Lucas. The message was simple. I know what you're going through, Ethan. I know you're angry. But if you want, I can help you transform it. This is not how. You should deal with it. At that moment, the anger seemed to have a purpose. It wanted to explode, to take revenge, to destroy. But the calm and thoughtful tone of Lucas, who had experienced his own pain and betrayal in the past, planted a seed of reflection in Ethan's mind. Lucas suggested something that seemed absurd at first. Transform your pain into power. Do something big, something that will get you out of this place. Revenge won't cure anything, but overcoming it will. I can help you. At that moment, Ethan felt a deep dilemma. He wanted revenge, but he knew it wouldn't solve anything. What's more, he realized that revenge could be a prison for his soul, keeping him even more trapped in the pain of the past. Lucas's proposal seemed like a harder, longer path, but it was the only path that deep down Ethan knew would lead him to true freedom. Ethan wasn't sure exactly what Lucas meant by turn your pain into power, but a part of him felt like this advice made more sense than any other thought he'd had up until that moment. He was tired of wallowing in the depths of pain and anger. What he needed was not revenge, but rather a way out of the emotional prison he was trapped in. Deep down, he knew that if he continued to harbor that anger, he would only be prolonging his suffering. Over time, he began to understand what Lucas was trying to say. The pain he felt could be the fuel for something greater, a new beginning, a new version of himself. Instead of looking for ways to get revenge, Ethan decided to focus on himself, on his recovery. He started showing up for work more willingly, focusing on his physical and mental health, and taking a break from social media where Samantha's presence still haunted him. Somehow, by distancing himself from the things that fueled his anger, he began to see his surroundings more clearly. It was during this time of seclusion that Ethan began to rediscover his passion for something he had always loved: photography. In the last few months, he had neglected this hobby, too immersed in the routine of his marriage and the expectations of building a life with Samantha. But photography, for Ethan, had always been a way to express his emotions and see the world in a unique way. Now the camera that he had once used only to capture happy moments became his tool for healing. He began to walk the streets of the city, capturing beauty in the simplest details: a sunset, a lone flower in the middle of a sidewalk, an old man's hands intertwined with a young woman's. Each photo he took seemed to be a way to reconnect with himself, to find beauty in a world that had, for so long, seemed dark to him, and each click seemed to lift the shadow of pain that had enveloped him a little further. But there was something deeper going on inside Ethan. He was beginning to understand that what he really sought was not to escape the pain, but to embrace it as part of his transformation process. The change would not come from outside, but from within. He was changing. He was no longer the Ethan who had been left at the altar. He was becoming someone new, someone who could look back without anger, someone who could find peace in the midst of the storm. Time passed, and Ethan was transforming in ways he himself could not have imagined. The pain of the betrayal was still there, but it had become a distant memory, a part of his past that no longer defined him. Photography, which had initially been a form of distraction, was now something deeper, almost a calling. Ethan felt that, through the lens of his camera, he was not only capturing images, but also the essence of people and moments. It was then that an idea struck him, an idea that would change his life forever. An old college friend, Andrew, who worked in marketing, reached out to him. Andrew had heard about Ethan's transformation and challenged him to share his photos, more widely, to create a professional photography website. "You have something unique, Ethan," Andrew said. "Don't keep it to yourself. The world needs to see what you have to offer." Ethan was hesitant at first. He thought about all the obstacles. Am I good enough? What if people don't like it? But a voice inside him, the one that had begun to emerge in those solitary moments of reflection, said, "You have a mission. If you don't share your gift, you're wasting the pain you've already experienced." He realized that his art wasn't just about capturing beauty. It was about showing resilience, the beauty of scars and healing. He created his photography website and began sharing not just the images, but the stories behind them. Each photo came with a deep caption about what he had learned in life, about overcoming and transforming himself. He talked about the pain, about how he had been transformed, about what really mattered in life. Little by little, people began to connect with him. Supportive comments began to pour in, people sharing their own stories of pain and overcoming. Ethan discovered that his art wasn't just about capturing pretty images. It was about telling stories that touched people's hearts. A few weeks later, he received an invitation from a local art gallery to exhibit his photos in an emerging artist's show. Ethan was surprised and thrilled at the same time. It had seemed like a distant dream, but now it was within his reach. He knew that he wasn't just exhibiting his photos. He was exposing himself, his journey, his pain, and Ultimately, his transformation. The same pain that had nearly destroyed him was now fueling his art, and art had the power to transform his life and the lives of others. As Ethan faced the gallery's invitation, he felt a deep sense of peace. He no longer had to hide. He could show the world who he truly was, a man who, though once broken, was now stronger and more whole than he had ever imagined. He had found his purpose. Revenge didn't heal him, but art, resilience, and purpose transformed his pain into something beautiful. The exhibition was a milestone for Ethan. The day of the gallery's opening arrived, and he was nervous, but also filled with gratitude. He never imagined that his grief would turn into something so great, something that would touch people's hearts in such a profound way. As guests began to arrive, he was surprised by the number of people who came to see his art. They approached the photographs with curiosity, admiring the details, the stories contained within each image. Ethan realized that by sharing his journey, he had touched something deep within the soul of each person who viewed his photos. Many visitors approached him, not just to praise his work, but to share their own stories of loss, resilience, and transformation. The conversations turned into deep conversations about grief, rebirth, and new beginnings. The connection Ethan was creating with others was greater than he had ever imagined. He was no longer alone in his journey. He was now part of something bigger, a network of people who were united by the power of resilience and faith. At the end of that night, as the gallery emptied and the lights dimmed, Ethan felt an unexpected emotion. It wasn't the satisfaction of an artist in a job well done, but something deeper. He had found a new way to live, something that fulfilled him from the inside out. He had turned his pain into art, and the art was creating a genuine connection with people. He was helping others heal, just as he had begun to heal himself. In that moment, Ethan understood that the success he was achieving was not measured solely by the sales of his photographs or the fame that might come with them. The real success was in the transformation he had experienced, and in the way his story inspired others to rise up, to believe that pain, though inevitable, can be a gateway to the greatest transformation. He hadn't become rich or famous that night, but he had become someone much more important, someone who had found his purpose and was helping others find theirs too. The next morning, Ethan received a call that would change his life even further. One of the major art galleries in New York was interested in his work. He was in shock for a moment, unable to believe what he was hearing. The exhibition that he thought would be a simple step on his journey was now becoming the springboard for a new life. A life where he could finally show himself to the world and share his true essence. Ethan smiled, thinking to himself, "This all started with pain, and look where it took me." With the invitation to the New York gallery, Ethan's life took an unexpected leap. His art, which had previously been a form of personal healing, now became a vehicle for recognition and success. But as he prepared for the new exhibition, something in his heart was different. He realized that the real prize was not in fame, sales, or recognition. The real victory was internal, something he could never have imagined while he was in the pit of pain and anger. Ethan looked back on the journey he had traveled and realized that he was no longer the same person. The pain of betrayal that had initially paralyzed him was now part of his story, but no longer his identity. He was no longer Ethan, the man left at the altar. He was Ethan Parker, the man who, despite adversity, had chosen to rise again and was now using his experience to impact the lives of others. The real victory was in the transformation he had experienced and in his ability to show others that no matter how broken life seemed, it was possible to rebuild oneself one piece at a time. The exhibition in New York was a huge success. The galleries were packed, people marveled at each photo, and the compliments were constant. But the greatest compliment Ethan received was from a woman who approached him late in the evening. She was holding a photograph of a lone tree with deep roots, and she looked at him with tears in her eyes. That image, it touched me deeply. You have no idea how much it helps me understand my own pain. I'm also trying to find my feet after a loss. It gives me hope. Ethan didn't know how to respond. He was moved, but also grateful. He had no idea that his art could touch someone in such a profound way. He realized that he had found something much greater than mere material success. He had found a way to inspire and heal others with what he had experienced, with what he had overcome. He was now living with purpose, and the feeling of helping others heal fulfilled him in a way that no other accomplishment ever could. Yet something still remained within Ethan. He knew that true power lay not in external achievements, but in the inner peace he had found along his journey. He knew that true victory was the ability to look at his pain and say, I am no longer a slave to this. I am stronger than this. I am someone new. And with that thought, he felt a deep peace. There was no longer any need to prove anything to anyone. He had won the most important battle, the battle against himself. Months had passed since Ethan began his new journey, and his life was at a point of balance he never imagined he would reach. He had reinvented himself, found his purpose, and his heart was touching the lives of many people. However, life, as always, brings surprises. And one of those surprises happened one day, when Ethan was reviewing a message on his cell phone. It was a message from Samantha, his ex-fiancée. He had decided not to try to contact her anymore. For him, Samantha was already a part of the past, a painful part, but one that he had learned to let go. And now, when he saw her name on the screen, his heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what to feel. What did she want after all this time? With a mix of curiosity and fear, Ethan opened the message. It read, Ethan, I know you must hate me. I never really apologized to you. But now, after everything you've accomplished, I need to tell you how sorry I am for what I did. I'm a different person now. I betrayed you and abandoned you, and it haunts me every day. I understand if you don't forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm rooting for you to be happy. Ethan read the words over and over, trying to make sense of what he was feeling. The pain he'd experienced hadn't completely disappeared, but he realized that the resentment was no longer meaningful. He had healed. He had moved on, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to truly let go. After a few days of reflection, Ethan decided to respond. He didn't feel angry, or even sad. He felt peace. His answer was simple, but sincere. Samantha, I don't hate you. What you did broke me, but it also taught me something important, that I am stronger than I imagined. I have already forgiven you, not for you, but for myself. I chose to move on, and today I am fine. I hope you are too. I don't hold a grudge. Be well. That was the final moment of his journey. Forgiveness was not for her, but for him. Freeing himself from past anger and pain was the key to finally becoming who he truly wanted to be. Ethan understood that forgiveness was not a gift for someone else, but for himself. And with that, he closed a chapter of his life, without resentment, without hurt feelings, ready to write the next one. Interestingly, the reunion with Samantha was one of the greatest proofs of his true transformation. Instead of seeking revenge, instead of drowning in hurt feelings, Ethan allowed himself to be free. He found true strength in the act of letting go. Overcoming was no longer a constant struggle, but an internal conquest. He was ready to move on, to love again, not naively, but with the wisdom of someone who knew the value of living fully, with peace in his heart. And so, Ethan found true victory, not in fame or material success, but in the peace he had finally achieved. He realized that forgiveness, transformation, and purpose were far beyond the pain that had broken him. He had overcome not only the betrayal, but also the need to prove something to someone. The greatest gift was understanding that his journey was unique and that true strength came from within. Today, he looks back on his story and knows that it was the pain that shaped him, but it was his choice to move on that made him shine. Have you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever had to rise up from a situation that seemed like there was no way back? What would you do in Ethan's place? If you also believe in the power of overcoming and transformation, don't forget to like the video and share this message with someone special. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart and make us reflect on the true meaning